if we can accomplish only one thing down here, we've got to expose the corruption to the tens of millions of Texans so they can finally know what's happening, what's being done. It's not just that it's happening to you, it's being done in your name.
Yeah.
If you voted for a Republican to represent you and to be your voice in the Texas legislature, I've got really bad news for you. The odds are you have a Republican that most likely has colluded to put Democrats in charge.
Hey, what's going on? This is Nate Schatzline. I'm the founder of For Liberty and Justice, where we seek to mobilize the church, wake up the city, and take a stand for liberty and for justice. I'm in a little bit of a different capacity here today. We're at the Austin, capital of Texas, and I'm here in the capacity of state rep with one of my closest friends, not just in the legislature, just in life, but Representative Brian Harrison. Look, there is very few people that I can say actually speak the truth and fight for the truth 100% of the time. And that is what you do here at this Capitol. So we were laughing. Oh, I appreciate it. We were laughing before we started rolling that it can be a lonely place for a conservative fighter. And so, but I'm proud to have you on. Thanks for taking the time.
Thrilled to be here.
We're going to be doing more of these every month, trying to expose, and I do mean expose, not just tell the story of, but expose the corruption that's here in the Austin swamp at a high level. And so it has been a wild first month of session. And so tell us just for the audience to hear, like what your perception of coming into the Texas House and then what we're actually experiencing.
No, it's wild. And you first of all, thanks for having me on. Thank you very much for standing as courageously as you do for liberty and freedom of the next generation of Texans. And it is shocking, even though we have the Republicans, the voters of Texas gave Republicans the governor's mansion, the lieutenant governor's office, every statewide elected official, massive majorities in the Texas House and the Texas Senate. What I was shocked to learn when I was elected at the end of 2021, after having served under President Trump in his first administration, is I just assumed that every elected Republican in Texas was fighting as hard for the freedom and individual liberty of the next generation of Texans as those of us in the Trump administration were. And I was really shocked, disappointed, and enraged in some respects to find out what the reality is even though Republicans, people that have the word Republican by their name, dominate the chamber, the leftist liberal Democrats actually exercise almost complete control in the Texas House of Representatives. And this has been going on for many years, ever since, about 15, 16 years ago, when a handful, I think around 11 Republicans realized if they go collude with the entire Democrat caucus, that's enough to have a majority. And so the whole Democrat caucus picked one of the Republican 11, and that person became the speaker. And so ever since then, we have had this, what's totally shocking and horrifying to most Texans who are only recently learning about this, is that even though Republicans have the majority, the Democrats pick the leadership of the Texas House. The Democrats pick the top staffer in the Texas House. The Democrats control the agenda on the floor in the hearings in the Texas House. So it's actually, I would argue, and recently have been arguing, it's probably the biggest example of voter fraud, because what's the point of election integrity if the Republicans you elect just hand Democrats the power once they get in office?
Well, it's crazy because, I came in 2022, I won my election. 2023, I started serving with you. And I had the same perception that you had of surely we have this massive majority of Republicans. We're going to be able to push through conservative policy. Like the idea that we would struggle passing your COVID Vaccine Freedom Act was
we still in 2025 have never banned COVID vaccine mandates for students in the state of Texas.
I couldn't fathom that reality when I got in. And to be honest, I've shared this with you many times. It took me a while in my first session to even come around to the idea of how corrupt the building was, because at first, for me, I kind of bought into this maybe it's the process. Maybe I don't quite get it. Maybe this is all going to pass at the end of the session. And they're just saying, hey, chill out. We've got a plan. I kept hearing from leadership, hey, we've got a plan.
Well, also, I think it didn't help you. I mean, this is a compliment to you, but you're a sane person. And you look on paper and say, oh, Republicans have a 25-seat majority.
Yeah.
The Democrats can't really be in charge in the Texas House. But you saw it after a few months.
Oh, my gosh. So 3 months in is when you and I think you came to the conclusion faster than I did. But I finally came to the conclusion. There was a select few of us that were just okay, this place is so bad. I feel like we just got to burn it down and start over.
Well, and just to give people some color on what we mean when we say like Democrats run the place. When I was elected, and I got here a little bit before you in 2021, Democrats were chairing 40% of our most powerful committees. I'm talking like, not like having an advisory role. Yeah. They were the chairman of some of our most powerful committees: public education, all crime law in the state of Texas, business and industry, natural resources, transportation. I can go down the list. And so, for example, while Democrats, especially during the Trump administration, were practicing lawfare across the country, trying to bankrupt and throw President Trump in prison, they exercised lawfare against Ken Paxton. We saw that in the Texas House, the session you showed up. Who does the Republican-dominated Texas House have running our all crime law committee? Well, it's a BLM activist Democrat. Yeah. In Texas, our parliamentarian is a Barack Obama White House lawyer. Now, they pretended they moved him off this session, but we just found out today he effectively got a promotion. He's now the top lawyer for the whole House. I don't even know if you've seen this. This just came out.
And he doesn't even have to really show up to work in the front office up here. I mean, he's just kind of working behind the scenes for a promotion. So the idea was we kind of came in, and for me, the first few months, like I'm just like, okay, surely we're going to pass the COVID Vaccine Freedom Act. Surely we're going to ban China from owning Texas
or
land.
Any of the Republican priorities.
Any of them. And surely we're going to give meaningful property tax reform. I'm hearing that we're going to give the largest property tax, decrease in the history of the state of Texas.
Because that session, we had almost a $40 billion surplus, which, by the way, just so you know, when you hear the word surplus, that just means your government overtaxed you, and we're sitting on $40 billion of your money. And I think I can speak for both me, and I think I can speak for you too.
Yes.
Our position is that it's your money, and we should give it back to you.
100% of it. 100% of it. And so fast forward, we get to the very end of session. We've effectively impeached a sitting attorney general.
Well, we not effectively. The Texas House did. You and I voted no.
Correct.
But the House did impeach him.
And we're looking at all these priorities that died. And I think at times it's easy for the grassroots to be like, oh, Dade Phelan, our speaker, he's the purpose. He's the reason. He's the one who made this happen. The problem is what we learned along the way was Dade Phelan was just a cog in the machine. Yeah. I mean, and you can take down the face, and effectively you could be less effective when you take down the face because you have a new face with a new reputation.
No, and in fact, ever since we passed the House Rules Package, which we call the Democrat Empowerment Act of 2025, because even though the grassroots and the voters across Texas finally stood up and said, we've had enough, don't put these radical leftist Democrats as committee chairman. Well, what did the wise guys, the Dustin Burrows team, who became the speaker because 30 Republicans colluded with 50 Democrats to take over the House again?
You're giving so much content. I need you to
glossing over this.
Yeah, I know. So speaker's race happens. And what did Dustin do? Because I think it's important that people hear, like, we are in a committee. We've effectively said, like, it's not, we're not even advocating for a human. We're saying things need to change.
No, I probably even should just slow down, because what I just said, it takes people a few times to hear it because it sounds so insane. It can't possibly be true is what you're probably thinking. But no, I will slow down and say it again. Voters of Texas sent 88 Republicans to the House and 62 Democrats. So that's like a 26-seat majority.
It's massive.
But Democrats picked our speaker. Well, you're probably, I'm going to say this slowly. Democrats picked our speaker.
Yes.
Well, how did they do that, Brian? How did they do that, Nate? Well, I'll tell you. Because 30-something, I can't remember the exact number, around 30 sellout fake Republicans went and chose not to vote for a fellow Republican to be speaker. They went and colluded with 50 literal Democrats and selected Dustin Burrows. So even though Dustin Burrows is a human being who's got the word Republican by his name, he owes his speakership to 50 Democrats. So he is owned by 50, and not just any Democrats. These are some of the most far-left liberal Democrats in the history of the Texas House. Open borders, anti-Second Amendment, abortion, up to the moment of birth. These are some of, total indoctrination in public schools supporting leftist, Marxist Democrats. That is who controls the Texas House. And you mentioned the speaker is not the biggest problem. It's just the biggest manifestation of the problem, because we have a situation where far too many Republicans, in order to get elected, will tell you, the voters, hey, vote for me and I'll stand up to the Democrats. Vote for me, I'll fight the radical left that are going to indoctrinate and bankrupt the next generation. But at every opportunity, when you're not watching, they think it's too stupid to call them out for it. But that's what I appreciate you trying to do, is expose and open the voters' eyes of Texas. They're now seeing that when these Republicans get down to Austin, they vote to put the very Democrats that they promised voters they were going to be fighting in charge.
Well, it's the Austin mind virus, right? Like we've talked about this, like there's something that happens when a Republican gets down here to Austin. You are indoctrinated from day one with your freshman orientation. And I'm hopeful that we have some freshmen that are standing with us. But like at the end of the day, what actually has to happen, it's bigger than just winning the elections. We have to expose to the voters what's actually happening. And so we have Dustin Burrows who sold us out, and he got all these Democrats to come in, and he's owned by them. And so the first manifestation of that being owned was seen when all of a sudden we had all these reforms, and it was birthed from the contract with Texas that you helped write, that I was part of, that this contract with Texas was so simple. Here's 12 points of how we can reform the Texas House. And just for examples, for those that maybe didn't follow that during our campaign season, one of them was, hey, we want calendars committee where all conservative bills go to die in the Texas House. We wanted to be more transparent so we see what's dying. We wanted no Democrat chairs. We wanted the Obama White House lawyer to be fired from being a parliamentarian.
We wanted the Speaker pro tem to be a Republican.
We wanted to get to work immediately and not delay the process. So they're very simple. Like, honestly, I really feel like in DC, these are things that like could be negotiated.
Well, I tweeted this the other day and people were really shocked to see it. I've had the privilege now of serving in both the DC swamp and the Austin swamp, and I get asked a lot which one's worse. After 3 years in the Texas House, it pains me to say I actually think the Austin swamp is worse because there is far less transparency and far less interest by the media and sadly by a good chunk of voters as to what happens down here because they assume because Republicans have such overwhelming numbers, we must be doing good things down here. But the reality is this swamp is more corrupt because they operate under like a shroud of secrecy. And I joke that, transparency is like kryptonite to the swamp, which is why they very much hate, you doing podcasts like this, or very much hate my Twitter feed because I said, and you are working on this too, if we can accomplish only one thing down here, we've got to expose the corruption to the tens of millions of Texans so they can finally know what's happening, what's being done. It's not just that it's happening to you, it's being done in your name. If you voted for a Republican to represent you and to be your voice in the Texas legislature, I've got really bad news for you. The odds are you have a Republican that most likely has colluded to put Democrats in charge. And by the way, you probably don't even really have a representative. You probably have a human being and they probably have a name and they probably have Republican by it. But the reality is, because they want to be comfortable in the swamp, they have chosen to make a deal to give all of the power you gave your rep to the speaker. So the reality is, if you are, there's 30 million Texans, the odds are good that you don't have a state rep. The odds are good that your state representative is Dustin Burrows, who is a fake Republican who is totally controlled by the Democrats because your state representative subjugated the power that's you vested in them. So and handed it to the speaker.
And what you're saying is, in practical terms, because I think if you're hearing this for the first time, you're like, there's no way. Like, there's no way it's that bad. And I'll be honest with you, if I was watching this podcast myself 3 years ago, I'd have been like, I don't know. And then I want to tell you how it plays out on day one. So here we come in, we obviously, Democrats choose our next speaker. Dustin Burrows is in power. And then I'll be honest, he said, I want to work with you, Nate. And I'm like, okay, look, I'm going to, I don't trust anyone in government, but at the end of the day, you're like, hey, okay, let's see if we can work together. So on day one, we get there. We have all these reforms from the contract with Texas, and we have all these amendments, even down to like no alcohol on the House floor, which consider that. You can't drink on the job, Brian. Like, this is just not rocket science. This is so simple. We get all these reforms down. We're ready to go. We're about to expose calendars committee. Texans are going to know how their rep stands on their conservative legislative priorities. And about that time, they do something, and this is very procedural, so I want to break it down. But as we're about to offer all of these amendments for the rules package, which it determines how the House is governed. As we're about to offer them, they do what's called, and I say they, it's Representative Jared Patterson out of the Frisco area. He's going to have a hard time this primary season. But I mean, ultimately, he comes to the front and very staunchly, very arrogantly says, members, we've had enough debate. Mind you, we've had no debate. He said, we've had enough debate.
I think one Democrat had spoken for a few minutes and that was about it.
Yeah. And so he goes, I'd like to call the previous question. Now,
tell him what that is.
For the record, this is when 25 members sign a piece of paper that say we want to end all debate, we want to kill all amendments, and we want to silence anyone who has any opposition, and we're going to go to a vote right now.
You're effectively shutting your microphones off.
Now, I don't know if this is a privileged motion or not because I tried to ask I don't want to call him Speaker Burrows because I think we also we have a dual speakership with Speaker Gene Wu as well. But I think at the end of the day, when Speaker Burrows makes this motion, he has to grant it for it to be acknowledged, which then goes to a vote. Now, here was the tough thing. You would expect that Democrats, knowing what was about to come with all these incredible conservative reforms.
To be very clear, the Democrats knew what was about to happen before the conservatives did.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
So you would expect Democrats to sign on to this thing, but Jared Patterson, a Republican, is offering it. And then we have Republicans down the line that have signed on to this thing. They silence us, all of our amendments. It then goes to a vote of the whole body. At that point, Republicans are kind of terrified because they're being threatened. They're saying, man, if you do not roll with the punches and get on board, all your legislation has died. You've heard it. I've heard it. It's dead. You can't pass a bill if you don't get in line and kiss the ring for the speaker. And so Republicans, some of them decide, I got to side with Dustin on this one, and I'm going to silence these guys. Some of them are ignorant, maybe. And that's putting it really kindly. And some of them are just weak. They're just weak. They're terrified. Yeah. And so we
need more leaders with courage.
They vote. I joked at a Texas for Vaccine Choice rally just previously that we have a corruption problem and we have a low testosterone problem in the Texas House. So I don't know which one it is. Maybe it's from taking the vaccine. But I think at the end of the day, they silence our debate. All of our conservative reform is done. And here was the most offensive thing. And then I want you to tell me. They said to everyone, Nate, my district, they sent out texts. They were ready. We just banned Democrat chairs with the rules package. Why is that not true?
It's the most cynical, disingenuous sham. And I have to go back to what I said a second ago because I think this is proof of it. They think the voters are stupid. They think you're too dumb to know that even though they gave Democrats more power than they've ever had in history, because, yes, they banned Democrat committee chairs. What they don't tell you, though, is they banned Republicans from being vice chairs of any committee, required every committee to be co-chaired by a Democrat, and then gave the Democrat co-chair as much, or I actually argue more power than the Republican chairman. And don't take my word for this. Look at the Democrat caucus. Every Democrat voted for it.
Yeah, so I think...
So that's really important.
I have to highlight that. So when they are sending out these texts that I saw in all these districts...
Pretending they took it,
There's some in Tarrant County that did this. They sent out these texts, and it just says, we ban Dem chairs. If you go back, almost every Democrat voted to ban Dem chairs.
Yeah, I think all but one.
And that one, I think, was just confused. I think they were like, wait, what's going on? And then Gene Wu,
the chairman of the Democrat caucus.
He declares victory. Yeah. He came out and said, guys, I know that we got Dem chairs banned, but
look at all the new power we've got.
We've got a lot of new power.
That's why they voted for it. And it's the same thing. You mentioned one member a minute ago. That same member and multiple others that are in on the complete corrupt leadership team, basically everything they're doing, they want you to believe they're doing the opposite. So they empower Democrats. That's why we call it the Democrat Empowerment Act.
Which you came up with. You coined it.
Yeah, well,
and we just ran with it, man.
That's right. Well, it's the truth. So they vote for the Democrat Empowerment Act and then tell you they're taking away power from the Democrats, even though every Democrat voted for it. So it's not true. But also look at things like DEI. Yeah. I mean, President Trump in 3 weeks has done more to combat DEI than the Texas House has in the 3 years I've been here. But what does the Texas House leadership do? Because people like you and I are exposing this on a daily basis. House leadership drops a bill. It says, this is our bill to end DEI in Texas. But what does the bill do? It actually protects DEI. It codifies DEI and liberal gender ideology into state law for the first time ever. But they got a bill. They're going to try to pass it. And they're going to try to tell you, we voted to ban DEI, when in reality, they protected DEI, gender ideology, in all of our public universities in the state of Texas. So they're going to do this probably 100 times.
Well, this is the pattern. Session. This is the pattern. And you said it earlier, but it can't be said enough. There's a pattern of the way that the Texas House has operated in the past is they do the exact opposite of what they're telling you they're going to do. And then they expect you to applaud them for it. Right, yeah. And so we banned DEI, but we're actually codifying into law for the first time in Texas.
And even when they finally do a good thing, there's a good chance we'll finally make some progress on education freedom this session. But keep in mind, 34 states have already done this. We're not exactly blazing any new trails.
We're not leading the way.
And not at all. 34 states have already done it. But when we pass it, because they probably will, because the speaker knows, well, it's the governor's top priority, and the grassroots voters, parents who are sick of having kids trapped in failing schools have stood up and said, we are demanding this and we're not going to take it anymore. And they primaried 14 incumbents last session who stood in their way. So they're going to probably pass it. And then they're going to throw themselves a ticker tape parade and say, thank us for delivering education freedom. What they don't want you to know is that they have been the obstacle. The leadership team and the corrupt leadership team in the Texas House have been the ones standing in the way of school choice and education freedom for years. Texas should have passed school choice when Florida did 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Texas should have led the way. So even when we do the occasional good thing in the Texas House and we do occasionally pass conservative things, it's over the objection of the failed fake Republican leadership team. And quite frankly, after they have delayed it for as many years and as many sessions as possible. So don't throw them a ticker tape parade like they're going to demand when we finally pass school choice. You ask them, where's the full surplus for our property tax relief? How come DEI is still funded in our public universities? How come you haven't done anything serious on election integrity? Hold their feet to the fire. Find out who your state rep is and call them. And don't just ask, what are you doing for the conservative agenda? Because they'll all have answers. Ask them specifically, what have you done to prove that you're willing to stand up to corrupt Republicans who are colluding with Democrats? And ask them for specific examples.
Well, and I think what we get accused of all the time is, in fact, what our speaker said when he walked in very arrogantly before he passed the Democrat Empowerment Act of 2025 was, he goes, members, do Republicans know how to win? And my response is very simple. Tell me when the last time we had one was.
Yeah.
When was the last time we won?
Well, and to that point, at the last session, we mentioned Republican Party priorities. These are the low-hanging fruit for conservatives. School choice, election integrity, border security. There were 8 of them that the Republican Party asked us to do last session. 8. How many were we allowed to even debate? 2.
Yeah.
How many were we able to pass? 1. Meanwhile, the failed, corrupt, fake Republican leadership team of the Texas House prioritized and put over 500 Democrat bills on the floor of the Texas House.
And let's be clear about something. It's the same leadership team with a new face.
Exactly the same.
Maybe even more dangerous, because when you take off a face, you get a little bit of a fresh reputation. Now, I think they're doing a pretty terrible job of maintaining that. But at the end of the day, that Democrat Empowerment Act of 2025 passes. We then recognize very quickly, got it, you are beholden to all of these Democrats. And we knew that was the case, but we were hoping that maybe there would be something that maybe we're wrong. I keep thinking maybe I'm wrong.
And they're being more brazen than I've ever seen. They're basically out in the open with their willingness to give Democrats more power this session than they had last session.
So there's 2 things I want to cover for our viewers, because I think it's important for them to hear. So not only did they betray us by calling the previous question and silencing debate that our constituents sent us here to speak, but they also passed the Democrat Empowerment Act of 2025. The next thing they did was what has been coined to be called Project Run Out the Clock, and we're still in it.
Yeah.
And so talk to me, because you were the one who brought this to light in my eyes of, we just got committee assignments, but how many years was it since we've delayed for over 30 days to get committee assignments?
Let me tell you first why it matters that we're burning the clock. So we've been here for 4-ish weeks. We have taken 4 or 5 long. So every weekend we take a long vacation weekend, 4, 5, 6 days, every single week. And I've been posting on Twitter the vote sheets. So if you want to know if your representative is voting
just so
for
you know, I've never voted for one. I voted against him every time.
No, you voted. That's right. But let me tell you why it matters, because even though the Republicans, right, they have R by their name, they're controlled, as you said, by 50 Democrats. Well, they know that they can't actually come out and vote against, school choice, or vote against border security, or vote against medical freedom, or vote against reining in executive emergency powers. So what they do is they run the clock out. And then that way they're able to say it to voters when they go home from the next primary or general election. So, when the voters like, why didn't we get real property tax relief? Why did our property tax bill still go up? How come we don't have medical freedom? All of the things that Republicans want. Okay, you passed the school choice bill, but only 1% of Texas kids can qualify. Whatever the thing is that we didn't get done. And they say, you know what? I agree with you. I wanted to lower your property taxes. I wanted to do more on border security. I wanted to do more on election integrity. I wanted to stop the Communist Chinese Party from buying our farmland. But you know what? And I fought for it. But we ran out of time. Because it's easier for them to blame the clock, because then they don't have to take responsibility for the fact that they were the ones that colluded in back doors closed backdoor meetings with radical Democrats to make sure those bills never come up to a vote on the floor. But they want to do it without their fingerprints on it. So they burn the clock for the first half of session. And then by the time it's time to take up the issues that are a matter to you, Texans who are fearful whether you're going to have enough money to pay your property tax bill and keep your home at the end of the year, well, that bill just doesn't have time. So that's why the burning, as what we call it, Operation Run Out the Clock. That's what they're doing right now. No speaker, to the best of my knowledge, in the history of Texas has ever waited as long as Speaker Burrows has to form committees. And we've been here 35 days. A full quarter of our session is officially over as of today. We have referred 0 bills to any committees. We have had 0 hearings on any bills in any committees. We have passed 0 bills out of any committees. But we did spend 2 days discussing Beyonce, and we did suspend the rules to pass a resolution honoring Beyonce, and we've taken 4 or 5 long weekends. So that's what's done compared to the Texas Senate, which has already passed a bill on school choice off the floor. Forget committees. They've got tons of committees.
It's out of the chamber.
Out of the chamber. School choice, a bill on property taxes. I think tomorrow they're going to take up bail reform, which is an emergency item that the governor designated. So the Texas Senate is proving you can work. The Texas House is running out the clock so that Republican priorities that you care about and that you voted for never see the light of day.
This is a really important point to make because as you're talking, people are probably sitting at home and they're like, by the way, they're really mad at you for pointing out that we've honored Beyonce.
I objected. Yeah, just for the record. And Nate, you didn't vote for it either.
I did not. It's so funny.
So we didn't deal with property tax reform yet, but we have honored Beyonce.
Do not mess with the beehive is what I got out of the Texas House. More commitment to the beehive than to the veterans being taxed out of their homes. So
we have literally, I'm just going to say it one more time. You asked me to slow down. The Texas House has spent more time deliberating on Beyonce resolutions than on school choice, property taxes, border security, election integrity, or ending DEI in the state of Texas. That is a fact. And let me tell you what, the corrupt House leadership team does not want you to know it. But that's true.
And I'm laughing because if I don't laugh, I'll cry. Like, it's brutal. So looking at that right there, it's important.
But you watching at home, let us know. Did you send him here to honor Beyonce? Did you send me here to honor Beyonce? If we're wrong, let us know. But I don't think you did.
If what I accomplished this session is honoring Beyonce, then you should not send me back here. So but that's why we're so focused on, we have one singular mission right now. And it's not to, let me be clear, I should say, the currency of this building is power. But in the eyes of members, what's being said is, don't you want to take home some bills that you have your name on? And so what's unpopular is doing what you sent us here to do, which is coming here just to shout the truth, pushing for conservative legislation and not having the pride of saying my name has to be on top of that bill.
Yeah, and let me highlight something real quick. So we've been kind of joking about the Beyonce thing, but again, to your point, we only joke about that because you're going to cry otherwise. One point that I really try to stress with folks, you've lived it, so you know it's true, is that every elected official, or if you're appointed to high office, or if you get elected to high office, you have to make a choice sooner or later. And it's almost always sooner. You have only 2 options, and you cannot avoid this choice. The choice is, you can prioritize being comfortable and popular in the swamp, or you can stand up and fight for the freedom and liberty of the next generation. And I'm here to tell you, as somebody who's served in both the swamp of Washington, D.C. and the swamp of Austin, Texas, you cannot do both.
Yeah.
And the problem is we have too many Republicans who care more about being loved by the swamp, loved by the special interest, having $1,000 steak dinners bought for them every night and glowing profiles written about them in the media than they do about what may not be the politically popular thing, but the right thing to say. We need to reduce spending, shrink government, so that the freedoms and liberties that the generations that came before us, many of them fought and paid the ultimate price for, so that our kids and your kids and grandkids can enjoy the blessings of liberty. They say, you know what? The price is too high. I'm not willing to be unpopular. And so I'm going to go ahead and collude with the Democrats so people down here like me. We need more Republicans willing to do the right thing, even when it's not the politically popular thing.
No, it's fantastic. I mean, that sums up the message that I want everyone watching. And I want to hit one more thing in the last 2 minutes of this, because please share this with someone to encourage them to know that I'm not just saying all that's going on to depress you or to make you feel bad. I'm actually telling you, you should be encouraged. We are fighting for you. Like, we have hope for Texas. Otherwise, we would not keep doing this job. I promise it's not for the benefits and it's not for the money. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to serve. And we carry that same love for Texas, but we're doing it because we believe there's a better Texas on the other side of this fight, where members can fight for conservative values, can actually stand up for the priorities that people sent us here to pass, and we can get those things passed. But we have to do this in stages. And first, exposing the corrupt swamp and draining it is step one. And so I want to expose one final thing, and I want your thoughts on it. So today, after the Democrat Empowerment Act of 2025 passed, after Project Run at the Clock is now at an all-time high, where we're not seeing bills referred, we're not seeing bills even debated. They've lied and said, well, Nate, the Texas Constitution bars us. No, we can suspend all necessary rules at any time, just like the Senate, and pass
We did it to honor Beyonce.
We did it to honor Beyonce. So after all of that, today, as I wake up, I see, oh, got it. Right after I wake up, I'm drinking some coffee, whatever. Oh, they're having a House administration hearing. We haven't passed a housekeeping resolution, which means we don't know how much our staffs are going to get paid. We don't know what the exact rules on managing our offices are. It's unprecedented. We've never seen this before. Yeah. We find out that in the Democrat Empowerment Act of 2025, they put a statute in it that says, hey, don't worry, the House administration can pass all of those rules for housekeeping, and it'll never go to a vote of the body. And then I find out that the House Administration Committee unilaterally decides that the chair, Charlie Guerin, has unbelievable power. He can make any decision on these issues, including giving, for the first time ever, vice chairs $5,000 a month raises to their offices, and taking it from our House budget with no appropriation from appropriations.
No discussion.
No discussion, no debate, and no vote from the body.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
It is, I'm almost speechless. It is this much of a betrayal of the voters of Texas. In fact, I tweeted out earlier because, keep in mind, go back to where we said a minute ago, he became speaker by getting 50 Democrats to vote for him. Well, what did those 50 Democrats get in exchange? And so it's an open question into my mind. Did our speaker buy the support of the 50 Democrats? Because what we just learned today is that not just Republicans, the Democrats that voted for him, the vast majority of them were given powerful positions in House leadership, and breaking news, thousands of your dollars every month that have never gone to a vice chair of any committee, to my knowledge, in the history of the state of Texas. So they got something, and I think it's an open question as to whether his support, whether he purchased that support from the radical Democrats to empower himself. But I will end on an optimistic note. If you're watching at home and this is depressed or you're angry, here's what my message to you is, that there's hope. Texas has a well-earned reputation for leading in freedom and liberty, but the problem is, and the reality is, you just need to know this, because we've got to solve this. For too many years, we have been content just to coast on that reputation. Government's been growing at rates that would make D.C. Democrats blush. Radical leftist Democrats have been empowered here in the Texas House. Conservative priorities are dying. Property taxes are out of control, and Texans are losing their home. But here's the reality. I believe that the vast majority of Texans want us to take a reverse course and once again assume our place, fighting back against unconstitutional tyranny coming out of D.C. like we saw for 4 years under Joe Biden. Thank God Trump is back there now. But they want bold Republican, conservative, pro-liberty leadership. So we are here uniting not with the swamp, but we're uniting with the silent majority that I'm praying and hoping and asking you to help make the reality that the silent majority in Texas becomes the vocal majority. Because the more Texans can understand this, as painful as it is to hear, as mad as I know that it makes you, as frustrating as it is for people like Nate Schatzline and myself, and for you and your friends and your family and your neighbors, when you learn about the corruption, when you learn how your Republican elected officials have sold you downriver to the Democrats, there are more of us that care about liberty than there are those who are willing to trade it for the next generation. So stand up, get informed, spread the word, pay attention to what's going on down here, because as a native Texan, I love this state. I want the state of Texas to be the number one state for liberty, freedom, and prosperity in the country. And I believe we can get there, but we got some more corruption to expose between now and then. Oh,
beautifully said. Man, thank you as a friend. Thank you for jumping on this podcast.
Thanks for inviting me.
Dude, thanks for fighting every day.
Well, you too.
It's brutal.
We're not going to stop, right?
We're not going to stop, man. Right. It is all in, pedal to the metal. Hey, look, if you like this podcast, just hearing the raw, honest truth, I've said it before. I believe it's a mission in life to be able to expose the corruption that is within our governmental bodies, especially here in the state of Texas, my home, where I'm raising my family with my amazing wife. And so if you like it, share it with somebody. And look, we're going to keep telling the truth. We're going to keep fighting for truth. And you're hearing really the precipice, the start of something that I believe is going to be incredibly special, which is just the truth about Texas politics. So thanks for watching For Liberty and Justice podcast. Share it with somebody. We'll see you next time.